Hello, everybody. It is episode 2, season 1 of the Thin Walls podcast, and I could not be happier that you are here listening. Thank you for tuning in. Today, we are talking to my very good friend, Kat Moon, about her journey as an EMT and kind of her day-to-day, but more importantly, we actually are talking about the mental health of first responders and how they are wildly underpaid for the work that they do. They're so underappreciated, and I really wanted to shed some light on that, and Kat showed up and was willing to be open and honest, and honestly, I didn't even think about the mental health part of it until I talked to her, and she was like, oh, I could go on and on and on. And so I was really thankful that she came on and was so open and so honest, because after talking to her, I think it's a very important topic, especially in the midst of a pandemic when we are relying on our first responders and our medical workers so heavily. It's kind of hard to remember that they're people too. And so I'm glad that we talked about it and shed some light on it. I do want to get right into the episode, but beforehand, I did want to go ahead and mention a resource that Kat does talk about later on in this episode, but I wanted to put it in the beginning because I just think it's that important that we, get it out there and that we talk about this and that people have resources. So it is called Foundation 1023, and you can go to foundation1023.org and read more yourself, but I do have their mission statement up. Help us put first responder mental health first. Foundation 1023 is committed to supporting the emotional and mental wellness of first responders and their support network who are experiencing illness, loss, or just stressful life events by providing confidential funding for emotional and mental wellness services, as well as access to peer-supported outdoor activities and events designed for personal wellness and connection. So, right off the bat, it sounds amazing. They are donation-based, so that is very important. They do rely on the support of the public, so please go to foundation1023.org, read more, do your research. Again, the mental health of everybody is so important, but when you put it in perspective of the people that need to be taking care of us day in and day out so heavily that they forget to take care of themselves, I think that's a conversation that needs to be had and is important that we have it. So again, I just want to thank Kat. Big shout out to you for being so open and honest and amazing. I love you, and I hope you all enjoy the episode. Okay. Hello, everybody listening. Thank you for listening. If you're here, this is my friend Kat, and we've been friends for what? I don't even know now. Oh my gosh. Since 2014.
2013 or 2014, yeah.
So that's like 6 years.
Yeah.
That's a long time. I met you before I met Paul.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, I did know you pre-Paul times.
That's weird.
I knew you pre-gay.
Kat's my friend that shows me all the cool places to eat. Which, did you know they closed Pasquini's?
Yeah. Yep.
Isn't that so sad?
It's horrible. It's going to be a new, Nepalese place now.
Ew.
Some sort of curry.
We went to, I always want to call it Papa J's, but I know that's not what it is. It's Tony P's.
Tony P's.
Have you been there?
Yeah, I've been there.
It's like the owner, but apparently it was his sister who owned Pasquini's. And I asked him, because I went there, and I was like, why did you close Pasquini's?
Yeah.
Because low-key, I like it so much better.
It was a way better building. It was so much cooler.
And they're like,
the food was
better.
It
has so much more flavor. Yeah. Tony P's is a little bland. I hope he doesn't ever see this. He probably won't. But no, I asked him, and he was like, oh, that was like my sister's business. I don't really know. And
I knew it was a family thing. I knew there was like a rift between it, but kind of a bummer.
Right. So I was like, okay, awkward.
It's okay. We'll find another Italian patty.
I know.
To sit on.
I know. But anyways, yeah, she shows me, especially all the Italian. She shows me the good Italian places. Pizza. Yeah. Shows me all the cool spots in Colorado. So if you ever need a good hike or a good place, that's really how I think of you, though. And we haven't talked in a while, but today we want to talk about your career and what you do. And so you want to tell them what you do?
Yeah, I'm an EMT. I work on an ambulance, and I've been doing that for the last 5 years.
Yep.
So most
of
my adult life, which is weird.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
I knew you when you were going to school.
Yeah.
And studying for all of it.
You knew me before any of it. You knew me when I was still working at Qdoba.
I did.
Yeah, which is crazy. And then, I had the crazy idea to go to EMT school and follow that. And it's weird because I didn't think of it as an actual career until recently, maybe in the last 2 years. I just thought of it as my job. It's just what I do. I go to work, I make money, I come home. And lately it's definitely become something that I think I'll be in for a really long time if all goes to plan, which, you know, maybe not, but I really do like it. And I don't think very many people our age can say that they have a career they've been in for the last 5 years. Usually people are right in the entry level, which this is still considered an entry level position, quote unquote. But yeah, absolutely.
We planned to do this last night, which was so fun.
Which is pretty cool.
So excited that you were like, yeah, I'm down. Just
I mean, it's what I love doing most, so I'm always down to talk about it.
And it's so interesting, and there's so much to talk about with it too, I think.
We could go down a lot of different roads.
Oh my god, I have two that I want to go down.
Okay.
And the first one is, we have another friend that I think is an EMT. There's so many jobs in your realm, in like the medical field, you know?
Yeah,
and so I think he's an EMT, but he talks about like how underpaid y'all are.
Oh, absolutely.
For what you guys do.
I have been in it for 5 years, like I said, and I just now hit $40,000 a year.
Oh my god.
That's with overtime and things like that, and that's because of the
overtime?
new position. Yeah. At the last agency I worked at, and I'm not going to use names or anything.
No,
if anybody in EMS is listening, they probably know where it is just by description. But I made $12.50 an hour. And I had like 48, so I was working 2 days straight, and then I'd have 4 days off, so there was overtime built in. And every so often I would pull a 72-hour shift or a 96-hour shift, and that would be really good money. But I did not have sick pay at that agency. I did not have any PTO.
She wants to be in this. This is Nala down.
My cat wants to add in her opinions.
We took her spot on the table, and so she's like.
But yeah, that agency was pretty messed up. So this is the first time in my adult life, other than working, because I used to work dispatch as well. I finally have sick pay and PTO and vacation benefits and a decent pay for the first time ever, which it's still. For Colorado standards, it's high. It's still low for just general standards. But anywhere in the United States, really,
it's bad.
It's really low.
It's
really low.
I lived in Florida. My roommate was. See, I can never remember the names of the jobs.
That's okay.
But she was CNA.
Yeah.
And she got paid crap, and she would come home so tired, and like you could see
do a
her
lot
just
of
like
work.
Drained.
Yeah.
And we talked about it all the time, and she's like, "Girl, you don't even know how upsetting it is." And I'm like, the fact, like, I saw you go to school. I saw what you were put through, and I saw what she was put through, and it makes me so angry.
It's part of it is really frustrating, and I was kind of a part of this too. When I started out, it was a volunteer job, and a lot of agencies around everywhere will still have volunteers. So when you have a professional job that still has volunteer labor, it's really hard to argue to pay all the professionals more when it's still somebody can do it for free, which isn't true. And that's like a whole wider conversation we could get into that more people probably know a lot more than I do. But that's kind of how EMS has started out. And EMS itself is modern EMS especially is a very new profession as we know it. It's only been around since maybe the 60s.
What is modern EMS?
So modern EMS, where we have an actual dispatch center where people can call in on a central line, and then you will get guaranteed ambulance, fire, police, everything for your problems when it gets called out. It's not just going to be the neighborhood guy that's like, yeah, I got a cart, throw the person on, let's try to make it to the neighborhood doctor. It's an actual system. So emergency medical services as a system is kind of what I'm referring to more so.
So it's like a whole other branch.
Basically, yeah. It's a whole
I didn't know that.
Basically.
See, you don't know how it works. That's
it's pretty crazy. Yeah. But that's a big reason of why we're not paid well. Another reason is because it's a certification and not a bachelor's or an associate's, which is so frustrating because I would love to have a degree. I don't. I should have gotten one earlier, but I decided to go and do this instead, and a lot of the people I work with also don't have degrees. My parents, they were in EMS, and I don't think my father got his degree until he was in his 50s. And that's just the way it is sometimes.
People's journey is their journey.
So I wish they had a paramedicine bachelor in Colorado. They don't right now. They have some on the East Coast. They have some on the West Coast. So if it was actually a bachelor program, we might be supplemented more. Around the world, I know there's really good programs, in New Zealand and in places like Ireland and the UK.
Of course
they're a lot more respected, obviously. But we're just not as respected. People are always like, oh, they're heroes. But they, our day-to-day...
Take 10% off your coffee.
Yeah, exactly. It's just... really frustrating.
It is, yeah. And it's like frustrating to me that you're like, oh, it's just a certification, but I come from the airline industry, and I know that there's a lot of jobs within that you get certifications for, but you make like 50 to 70K after you get a certification, exactly. And it's like a couple months of classes that you pay $5K for, and that's it. Mm-hmm. But you still get paid so much more. But you guys are literally saving lives and are in charge of, like, a lot of the times, like, people's lives are in your hands, and, like, you're the first ones there. You're the first ones to sit there and, like, assess the situation. And that's crazy to me that you make. Well, it's not fair.
There is money to be made. There's a couple different routes to go down. Like, EMT is, like, basic, first line, entry level. You can work in an ambulance, you can work in an ER. From your EMT, you usually get your paramedic. That's usually the road people take.
Yeah, that's the road you're taking, right?
Yeah, because that's what I want to do. I love the ambulance. I'm really passionate about the ambulance. That's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. A lot of people will get their paramedic and then go the fire route, and they'll become a firefighter paramedic at a department. A lot of places are fire-based, is what it's called, where it's a fire department that's in charge of fire services and medical services. They kind of just lob it into one. That's fine, and they get paid a lot of money. Really? Fire makes a lot of money. There's a lot of paramedics that they can climb ranks in their organizations depending on where they work, if it's still a medical-based system. You can also get further education and get on a critical care team, work on a helicopter or a fixed wing and fly around and do things like that. So there is money to be made.
You just gotta, it takes is the first while. Step.
Yeah, and arguably that money you could still probably make more, especially if you go nursing or go PA. It's a lot of options and routes you could do. Yeah. It's just frustrating that it's not right here that I can make. Yeah. I'm fine now. I don't want to be somebody that's like, I want more money. I'm frustrated, but it is really hard that you work so many hours and you work so hard. And you're still worried about making rent sometimes. Yeah. When I had that accident, and I was terrified about missing work and not being able to pay rent. Like that's messed up.
So you were in an accident?
Yeah. It's been almost 2 years now, which is crazy to me. But I was in the back of the ambulance with the patient, and basically stuff happened. A car ran a red. We were going down the road. It hit us, and the ambulance rolled. So it was pretty intense. I'm okay now. Everything's cool now, but it was pretty wild.
I don't think I remember talking to you about that, to be honest with you.
I don't know if we did or not. That whole time of my life is like a blur.
Yeah.
So
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
Yikes.
Yeah, it was definitely insane.
How common is that with the ambulances? Because I know obviously you guys are like rushing through traffic, and some people...
The minor fender bender accidents where nobody's hurt, way more common than you would think, unfortunately. Even though we're loud and we have those lights, people don't always see us.
Yeah.
And every so often it's the operator's fault of the ambulance, and that's really frustrating, but that's why we are trained to be careful and clear intersections and watch everybody else around us. I don't know any specific statistics on deaths from driving or anything like that, but I do know that if you work in an organization where you are, working a 24-hour, 48-hour or longer shift, sleep deprivation is a huge issue, and that definitely lends to the danger of driving an emergency vehicle. That's just the way it is. That leads to the danger of driving a normal car. So
what do they do about that? Do they do anything about that?
I don't have a good answer for you right now. Yeah, I wish I did, but I don't really know.
See, I feel like our whole medical system is messed up in so many ways, but that's like
all over the place.
That's a whole nother episode.
We're gonna touch on so much today. Probably that's like, that's a whole other conversation we can have. And then
it's huge.
Unfortunately, just gonna have to leave it untied.
There's a lot of stuff wrong. I think that's my opinion.
Absolutely.
That's my opinion.
I agree with that.
But it's cool that you're so passionate about your job and that the money isn't everything to you. And you're
not at all.
This is what I love to do. This is what my parents did. Like this is.
Yeah, it's weird that my parents did, because when I was growing up, I remember, Christmases without both parents, or maybe one parent was there, and then, Thanksgiving, holidays like that.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that was just life. I just understood that. I understood that my parents had a very important job that they loved and were very passionate about, and I also understood from a young age that was just how it was.
Oh my gosh.
In my early young adult years, I was so against this kind of profession. I was like, fuck that. Yeah. I don't even want to be around that. I remember seeing the turmoil put on my family. Oh my God, that sounds horrible. But I couldn't get away from it. I don't know. It's super exciting. It's really engaging. You feel really satisfied day to day. If it's a good day on a bad day, even though my bad days at this job are better than any good day I've ever had at any other job. Really? It just feels like I have so much room to progress and learn. And I love that. I really, really do.
Yeah.
There's always something new or something I haven't seen, or a better suggestion from a coworker on a way that I could do something. Or
she is mad.
She's very, very cocky. Do you want to go out? We can go out. Nala. She just talks a lot of shit.
No, that's okay. That's all right. I don't mind. I really don't. This is like a real podcast. Like, this is real life. We're not in a studio or nothing.
Nope, my cat.
We're in your kitchen.
Is here.
But we wanted to talk about mental health, which I didn't even think about with like people who are in your line of work.
Yeah,
you should.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty new movement, especially in talking. I mean, I already mentioned my parents were in EMS, and their generation was kind of they were kind of the pioneers of everything in the 80s and the 90s especially. It was a really violent time. There was a lot of really big, bad stuff happening in EMS.
A lot of big changes in society.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of gang violence. That was really big then. And they learned a lot about trauma and emergency medicine. And I mean trauma is the calls, I guess. But what they didn't really think about was the trauma of, like, the mental trauma of the responders. It was more of a pick yourself up, keep going type deal, because it's very pseudo-military almost, and a lot of people from the military are in EMS. It's just that kind of...
Because your brain is trained to, like, under pressure.
And it's that structure, and yeah, exactly, people that work well in pressure, we should be in this job. That's kind of the way it is. But unfortunately, that led to a lot of EMS suicides, and that is one of the number one killers of first responders. I can't remember if it's number one or number two. I'd have to look that up, so if I'm wrong, I apologize, but it's pretty prevalent.
Yeah, it's just something I didn't even think about until we were texting about it last night, and you were like, oh my gosh, I could talk for hours about mental health for, people in your line of work, and it's like, oh my gosh, you don't even think about, like, and even the people who work in the hospitals and stuff, it's like, I don't know why that didn't even cross my mind.
Because that's not what you want to think of somebody who's supposed to handle everything.
Yeah, like, they just are like...
We're supposed to show up, there's chaos going on, and we go out and sort it out and see what we can do to make it better and get people out of situations and take them somewhere else.
And then you're on to the next one.
Exactly.
And you know what's crazy is, like, you're going to laugh, but Paul got me into Scrubs. Obviously, that's not even close to the reality.
No, it's funny, and I think people have heard this before, but it's the most accurate one for... just attitudes and mindset sometimes, and that's more of a goofy Zach Braff kind of thing, but oh my god, watching some of that show, the stuff that goes through their minds, you're like, holy crap, I thought that.
I like watched the first couple episodes and I was like, oh my god, and like when what is his boss's name, the funny one,
Dr. Cox?
Yeah, Dr. Cox, where he was like, if you're gonna feel this intense about it, you need to get out now because you can't do this job. And I was just like, damn.
Which, I mean, and that's been said to people, and it makes sense. Like, yes, that is, and that's the kind of attitude that we're starting to actually try to move away from. Is the, if you're not strong, you can't do this. Yes, there is definitely merit to that. You should be able to handle things and be strong for people. Like, if you are in a really bad call, it's a sick kid or someone who really needs your help, you can't be the one crying in the doorway. They don't need that from you. They need somebody to actually handle it and get through it. That being said, if you need to take a minute later, you shouldn't be ashamed of that. No. There's nothing wrong with being like, holy, that was messed up. That was just messed up. I have a lot of feelings about that. I have a lot of thoughts about that. I know that we did what we could and blah, blah, blah. It's not our fault. But that is something that's kind of new to everyone. And working with coworkers that are older than I am, that have been in the job for, 30 plus years, it's weird to have these conversations with them because they kind of just shut down.
Really?
Or they go, yeah, no, that's just what happens. They'll kind of deflect because that's just how they have been their whole time, and that's how you cope when you see. I mean, 911 isn't always the crazy, insane bad calls, but what we're seeing every day is just regular human suffering. It's not somebody who's happy. Mental health, we see a lot of drug addiction, we see a lot of withdrawals. Domestic is horrible, especially with Corona right now. Those calls went up, which is horrible.
See, I wanted to ask you about, like, how's your job been with coronavirus?
Terrible. And that lends itself to the mental health issues. Yeah. Because usually the way that a lot of modern EMS people cope is we'll go to work, we'll run on calls, we will hang out with our coworkers, we'll do what we can. If we're able to, we'll talk about what we need to. If not, we'll just go home. But But then on our days off, that's really where we try to de-stress and do things that we love, you know, go hang out at breweries with our friends, go outside to the mountains, you know, go to movies, do the normal people things that we love doing. And I think everybody, not just first responders, but everybody has been totally muted with that kind of option. There's no way to really de-stress, especially when that is in front of you all of the time. At work, we're dealing with the virus, and when we come home, we're still dealing with it. So we're not able to just leave that at work like we usually would be able to, and that has been really difficult.
Yeah.
So.
Ugh. I could not do your job, man. I can't. Like,
everybody says that, but...
And, like, I think about it for you, like, you started this pretty much right out of, like, high school. Like,
yeah,
you knew
I had a few years in between of, like, maybe I should do this, maybe I should go music, whatever. And then, I really kind of jumped on it.
Yeah.
So I haven't looked back.
How has it affected your life? Because, I mean, if you jump into it from, like, okay, I'm 30, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
You've lived a lot of your life.
It's true.
And then all of a sudden to see all this stuff, I'm sure that has a different effect. But for you to be, like, a kid, pretty much, to go right into seeing all this, like, real life stuff happen in front of you that you're like, holy crap. Like, do you have a new appreciation for life?
I guess I never thought of it that way. I think... this is a problem I've seen in my interpersonal relationships. I think for the beginning of it, when I was really young, I think it made me feel like I had a inner window to the workings of the world, and I got it more than everybody else, which, I was seeing a lot more than people, like our normal friends were and things like that, but that didn't really make me more understanding of it like I thought I was until later. It gives you a weird complex for a little bit. You gotta knock that off and hit that off early. It makes it really hard to connect with normal people. Yeah,
well, I remember, too, I'm total transparency. Like, I remember when we were first hanging out and I had, like, stupid-ass problems, like, boy problems or, like, whatever. You were like, get over it. Like, it could be a lot worse.
Oh,
like,
God.
But you were right. Like,
exactly. I don't know how to connect with people.
Yeah.
And it just feels like when I was younger with this especially, and I'm still young in it, I can't talk like I've been doing it forever, but...
A long time, though.
The first couple of years... I felt like a ticking time bomb sometimes, where I was just ready to explode or ready to tell people off, or, you know, they have no idea. And that's such a terrible way to go through life. That is so frustrating for everyone around you, especially you. That's no way to deal with people. And it makes me nervous for the future. Right now, I have really good, deep relationships with the friends that I do have, and I'm really grateful and thankful for that. I'm very nervous about dating. I'm very nervous about anything that's close. Because of my job, I feel like I'm really, not like emotionally stunted by any means, but I definitely have become more closed off and more private, which I think there's, what's that called? What's that word? I think there's something good. Oh God, I think there's benefit to that. But I also, it is really hard to just chit-chat. Yeah. And, you know, have a normal day. I really can, and I love it when I do. And sometimes I'll even have a rule with even my work friends that if we go out, we're not talking about work. I don't want to be a medic right now. I don't want to do this. I just want to have a beer and have a nice time. So a lot
of your friends are medics.
Yeah, and that's the problem with dating as well, as a lot of people date with an EMS, and then you're at home scene controlling your living room, and it's fucking ridiculous, and it just never turns off. Yeah. And that is, it's really, that's a big anxiety of mine, honestly, is how do I navigate that now with this background? And you meet a lot of people that they'll kind of get off on it. They'll be like, oh my God, you're a first responder, you're a medic. Oh God, tell me the worst thing you've ever seen. I can handle it. And you're like, no, I can't do that. Like, this is weird. Or they get all... It's really strange when you meet somebody who's not in it. But then when you are with somebody who is an EMS, you don't know if they're really going to hear you out because of their experience or whatever, how they deal with things. So it's a whole other mix of stuff. It's been really weird for me growing up in it, I think. Yeah. So I think it's good that I started young. I think I'll be better for it, but it's been weird.
Yeah. So. I didn't even think about the dating thing. See, that's crazy. It's like your whole life kind of revolves around what you do.
Which can be really frustrating at times. And that's my fault. That's my choice. Yeah. I've been trying to balance it a lot, and with the new place that I work at and the new hours I have, I think I've really kind of figured it out. But it can be all encompassing, and it's really hard to be able to check yourself if somebody doesn't remind you, or if you don't have a good support system. That was something I learned I mean, since that accident that I mentioned, that was a really dark time for me in general. That was really hard calls. I was taking care of a lot of really sick people with my partners and learning a lot about how this job actually can affect you in a negative way, and if I really was cut out for it or not.
And you forgot about yourself?
Completely. I did not know who I was or what I was doing or how to do anything with my hands anymore. It was ridiculous. I lost a lot of friends. I lost a lot of really close people. I lost a lot of myself for a little bit. But through that, it's kind of like a forest fire. It burns everything down and then things grow through it. I built a really strong support system. I feel way stronger in myself. I still have some of those anxieties about my job every so often, but I think that's a healthier thing to realize than to just be like, I love it. Everything's awesome. Yeah. It's a really strange job sometimes. And I feel a lot better. Yeah, with my standing now. I think you mentioned it at the beginning. You were like, "There's a lot of changes for you in the last couple of years." Yeah, and I feel more mellow. Yeah, in general.
You were saying this is the first year that you felt like you're like, "Oh, everyone's saying 2020 is so crazy and crappy."
It is. It definitely is horrible. But
for you personally, you're like, "I'm finally level. Like I can breathe." Yeah, and it feels good. And you said you've been in therapy for a year.
It's been almost a year and a half, and I think that's been a really huge turning point for me. Yeah, I know therapy's not for everybody sometimes. I think it should be, but
I think so too.
That's just what people in therapy say.
Yeah, and I mean, I was going to tell you this has nothing to do with being an EMS, but like we were talking about it earlier, me becoming a mom, I've been a mom for almost a year now, and like I lost a lot of people too. Like I lost a lot of people in my life. It was like exactly what you said, like the forest fire, and then things grow through it, and I'm finally at the point where things are growing and I'm catching it.
And it's like, painful, but then when you see it, you're like, oh.
But you have to talk about it, and people don't talk about it, like on social media and stuff. It's just, and that's like really honestly why I created this too, is because I wanted to talk about mental health, because I feel like nobody does.
No,
like
or they mention it and they're like, oh, let's talk about mental health. Take a bath.
Right? Yeah.
Wash your face. Not like no. You need to call yourself out for a minute and realize you're being an asshole. You'd stop that. Like, knock it off.
Let's not pretend like you're not like being crappy. And not only to yourself, but the people that you love, and like being open about, going to therapy or getting on meds.
And what you go through. Most people at work that I work with, they don't know that I do that. Yeah. We're very private people, and we work together if we don't know each other well, which is weird because you sit in an ambulance with them for, 10, 12 hours a day, or you're living at a station with them, which is fine. That's just how people carry themselves. You don't have to be close with your coworkers. Yeah. But it is really strange to think that we are going through these experiences together, and
you guys are just like quiet.
Yeah. Like you just might just be chit-chatting. Yeah. It's a whole other form of communication that I didn't think I would ever be a part of. It's something that I never expected. It's really interesting.
Yeah. So coworker relationships in general are just weird.
They're wild.
Because like they have their own stuff going on in their life. God, yeah. But then like you're in this space and you're like,
and then
we're good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's at any job, but especially a high stress job where there's a lot of responsibility and a lot of expectation. And honestly, it's not even that we're hard on each other. We're hardest on ourselves. That we're our own worst critics, which I see across the board with paramedics, firefighters, EMTs. Oh, yeah. Everyone's just so hard on themselves, which, I mean, that's good. You should want to grow, and you should want to be your best that you can. Holy crap, when you take that home with yourself, you can beat the crap out of yourself more so than you were when you were like a 15-year-old emo kid, It's horrible.
Or even having to deal with, like, bad situations. I don't know what you see in your day-to-day, obviously, but I can assume at least some things, Yeah. And so when you see those bad things, or like you didn't do what you were supposed to do, or you mess up,
or if somebody gets hurt because of your decision, and it's not that you have that decision in your head that you want to hurt somebody, but stuff happens sometimes, or maybe
out of your control.
Make the right decision with the right amount of time, things like that. How do you get past that?
How do you cope with that?
Yeah. And so as an EMT, I don't have as much responsibility as a real paramedic, which I'm going to school for. It starts next month. So by this time next year, you'll actually see me as a paramedic, and I'll be graduated and all that. It'll be kind of crazy. Yay! But that responsibility of decision making and autonomy will be on my shoulders, and I really need to be. That's why when I was studying those things, I had the paramedics that I work with now teaching me.
Yeah, you were very serious about it.
Oh my God, I need to know this. Because if you don't, that means somebody is going to be lacking because of you, and that's not okay. It's just not. You can't know everything. You can't always see everything coming, but you can definitely try to anticipate and really
do your best
for somebody. And that's what I've been told. My father really gives me a lot of advice on it. when I call him frustrated from work, because I'll call him about work specifically all of the time, and I'll be frustrated about a patient or how we talk to somebody or something like that, and he will say, listen, forget all of the rest. All you need to do is care about somebody and do what you can for them with that care in mind. And that's exactly it.
Yeah.
So that is what we do, is we have to show everyone we come in contact with some sort of compassion, some level. Mm-hmm. And that's more important than anything else we're going to do for them. Mm-hmm. People are not going to remember the medications that we push or any of the cool interventions that we did or that awesome IV unless it hurts a lot, you know what I mean? But they are going to remember how we made them feel, and that makes me so nervous some days because I don't want to make anybody feel like crap, but it just makes me nervous for my job sometimes because they're not having a good time when they're calling 911.
Right, yeah, it's hard.
Not a very...
Yeah.
You're not walking into it, oh, hey, how's it going? Yeah, we have this problem. I guess you could kind of figure out it's usually some sort of issue going on.
And they're already in a different mindset as it is. They're not calm most of the time,
No, not at all. And learning how to talk to people, I think, is a skill. They can't teach that in class at all. They can kind of give you some de-escalation tactics and things like that. Yeah. But if you don't know how to talk to people, you need to get the hell out of this job.
I was going to ask, like, you know, I won't lie. So I grew up in a very unstable home, and my mom called 911 a lot.
Oh, gosh.
And it was over sometimes serious things, over sometimes really stupid things that maybe she would lie about, or like, she would waste your guys' time. I'm not gonna, you know? And I'm sure you get that a lot.
Yeah.
And so they would... It's like, it's funny because you're like, oh, you need to learn how to talk to people. But they were so rude to us.
Oh,
like,
God.
they were so rude to us. Oh. And, like, they would always get mad at us as the kids, and they'd be like, why do you disrespect your mom? And we'd be like, yo, like, what? You know? And we'd be so upset, but now as an adult, I kind of get it, because I'm like, you know how pissed they probably were?
Yeah.
That they came there
all the time. And that's, you know,
yeah.
They have to. That's their job. They should not have treated you badly because of it. You can't... The thing that I always try to remember is I'm a professional first responder, but no one's a professional 911 caller. Even if they're calling all the time. Yeah. That's not how that works. And you should not have to know how our system works in order to understand it. Mm-hmm. We should just be there to help. Mm-hmm. That's our whole job.
But you see like me growing up, you know, I saw the mental toll it took on those people. You could just see how upset they were and like how over it they were, and I did not blame them. I got mad when they like blamed us.
Yeah,
I was like, we weren't the ones who called y'all.
At that
like,
point too.
Right?
So what
the
hell?
You know. So, do you have any advice for people or resources for people that are in your line of work for mental health? Or like,
one resource that I know of is Foundation 1023. I went through them personally to get matched up with a therapist.
Is that the therapist you're with now?
Yeah, and she's awesome.
Wow.
And it's mostly geared towards first responders, so it's either people that have been in the business or they just know how to work that really well.
Wow.
So it's been impressive. I'm still young in it, so I don't know of any other resource. I'm still learning as well. Mm-hmm. But the advice that I get from my preceptors and trainers and parents is just, well, not actually my parents. My parents are not exactly great at the whole mental health thing just yet, which that's them. That's okay. They figured out their lives. They're older adults now. They can, you know, they're fine. But mostly people my age that I work with now, we're really the ones talking about it. And it's really just a support issue. It's really just checking in, saying, hey, you doing okay? Or, hey, I had a call, I need to talk about it. Or, hey, I had a really weird partner today, I just need to talk about how things went. Or just, you want to grab a beer, and having some sort of normalcy.
Conversation.
Yeah, and for me, it's really making sure I still have outside of EMS friends and people to go to, so I'm not so locked into the complex, like I mentioned earlier, and I'm not just always on. Yeah. And that's really hard. And it's really hard because I live in the city that I work in, so, you know, I'll walk down the street and I'm like, oh, I ran a call there, I did that there, so that guy was there, and it's hard to leave work behind. So I think having an outlet and getting out of wherever you're working in is important.
So would you say, like, for the people listening, if you do have EMS friends, when you're hanging out, like, don't talk to them about their job? Like,
no. If they want
even though that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, and that's fine. And I think checking in and seeing, hey, is it okay if I ask you this question? Or, you know, things like that.
Respect.
Don't ask what's the worst thing they've ever seen. Don't ask about what's the goriest, bloodiest thing. It's not because they're trying to spare you why would you want someone to go through their worst possible moment with you? That's messed up. And it's the whole privilege thing. That's another person's experience that they had to go through. They don't have the right to share that. That's not fair. Unless they're trying to get through it. You're not their therapist. You're not there to support them. You're trying to see something gory and
it's like, go to YouTube.
Yeah, shut up, dude. Watch a gory movie. You think you're so cool and, human suffering, that's rad. You have no idea. You have no idea. And it's not that I'm so kumbaya, like, oh God, that makes me cry. I have no time for it. I have no room for it. If you want to ask your EMS friends questions, I think asking them what's the most interesting thing you've ever seen, or what was a moment that you felt really proud.
Right, yeah.
Or, what's a really funny thing that you like, as long as you're ready for the dark humor that's going to come with it, and you might be a little offended. I think things like that, or what's your favorite experience with your partner, something like that. I think that really is more enriching than knowing their worst possible call. We all know that we are the people that go to the bad stuff. That is what 911 is for. You don't need to, you could watch the news.
Exactly. It's hard, I think, for normal people too, though, because it's like you are curious.
Absolutely. And I always describe it as, because I teach at an EMT program, and I always describe it to my students as everybody in the world, we're all on top of this rock. We're just hanging out. And when I go to work, I get to crawl underneath the rock and lift it up and see all the creepy crawlies underneath it and all the inner workings of society and stuff that people don't realize. And then when I come home, I put that rock back down.
Okay.
And every so often I see something I really don't like. Every so often I see something normal and it's good, but it is a very different perspective than most people have.
Yeah.
So.
Well, with that being said, let's get into something a little happier then. What is your proudest moment? Because that's a good one.
Let me think on it for a minute.
You're good.
There was a really bad rollover on a highway at my other agency I was working at. We showed up and the car was in pieces, just crumpled metal. I had not seen a rollover that bad in a while. It was because cars nowadays, they're built really well. People are usually safe unless they're going fast. And
I always I'm sorry I have to say this.
Fine.
Paul always laughs at me. But anytime we see a car wreck on the side of the road and we see ambulances and stuff, I'm always like, I hope they're okay. I pray for them. And Paul's like, nah, they're dead. Don't say that. But he does it to mess with me. When you see a really bad
call, you're just like, oh shit, there's no way. Yeah. And that usually for the most part we'll be like, yeah, no, maybe they're okay. For the most part, people are okay. But when they're not, they're really not. And this car, I was like, this is going to be a pronouncement. There's no way. And my partner and I walk up, and there's nobody in the car, and we walk around it, and there's a group of people that had pulled the two girls that had been in it out of the vehicle.
Oh.
Not a scratch on them.
Oh, my gosh.
A few bruises. They were definitely freaked out. And we pulled them into our ambulance just to check them over really well. They had their mom on the way to come pick them up. Turned out that they had just moved here from out of state. They were, it was a girl and a girlfriend, and they were just on their last leg of their trip, and this accident had happened. And all of their belongings were in the vehicle. It was their car, that they probably worked really hard for. And they were so just shocked about it. And my partner and I were like, no, I know this is frustrating. I know that you lost all your stuff. I know this car is in pieces.
But you don't understand.
You are walking right now. You're walking away from that. That's incredible.
Did you tell them? These
were the words that we were like, we thought you were going to be dead. There is no way. This is incredible. And the proud moment came when their mom showed up. And I don't know whose mom it was, but she embraced both of them, and they just cried. And it was my partner and I had to not make eye contact because we were going to cry. And that was one of the first times on scene that I had that kind of reaction where it just felt so good that people were okay.
Yeah.
It was so refreshing and so nice to see that. And not to have this whole horrible story of like, God.
So what kind of car were they driving?
Just an SUV.
I'm about to go
normal SUV. Yeah. No, it happens sometimes if you're going too fast. Some things can just happen. I don't think it was their fault. I don't remember what actually happened with the
car
issue. And I don't think it was the car's fault, but it just happened. The cool thing was, though, later on, I got an Instagram friend request, and it was one of those girls, and she messaged me, and it said, hey, I'm that girl from that accident. I don't know if you remember, but you and your partner were so nice to us. I have the message. I can read it. It was really cool. And I basically it was like almost a year later that I got like thanked for it by that person, and that made me feel proud. I didn't do anything, you know, I didn't provide any care per se. I took their blood pressures, but I guess my partner and I were really able to make them feel comfortable and
that's
show
huge.
up and be the first people to say you're okay, and that mattered huge to them. So it is that felt pretty good.
It's like you said earlier, like if you don't know how to talk to people, then you need to do a new job. And that is like so true, because I've never personally been through anything super traumatic like that. But I remember when I was pregnant, there was like all the nurses but one were awful.
Yep.
Or no, good. I mean, good. One was awful.
Oh.
And I remember like that was all I could think about, was like how awful she was, and being like, my body just went through this traumatic thing, and like, why is she being so awful? And Paul was in the same spot. He was like, yeah, why? Like, but then we thought like, okay, we need to stop, because like literally everybody else was amazing and great, and like, but it's important, like
it is. And you don't remember anything, like you do remember those other nurses because you had to stop yourself and remind yourself.
But you remember the bad, like that's I think how our brains are wired, just as humans, most of us.
And we could have been just like, wow, this is bad, you should wear your seatbelts, and they were, but like, you know, stuff like that, we could have just brushed it off as like, whoa, but we took the time to sit with them and make sure they were safe and wait until their mom got there, and you know,
get
check
them to
them
stop
out
shaking
really,
a little bit,
and really check them out and make sure they truly were okay, and that mattered. So, and sometimes it's those little things that you do.
So are there any calls that you get that are like I was telling you earlier about my mom, like are there calls you get that are frustrating and you're like, why did you call us?
All of
like,
the time.
What are like the most common calls that you get? Is that okay to ask?
Most common, I would say, are usually drug or alcohol related, just because that's such a prevalent problem. And that, you know, people are always like, oh, it's definitely the homeless people. It's all over. Everyone has a vice. Everyone is addicted to something. So those are definitely our most common, or something related with that kind of problem. Alcohol and alcohol-related issues are so prevalent. It is incredibly frustrating, and I can't really talk because, you know, everybody drinks. We all have beers, we all have wine, whatever. But to watch somebody drink so heavily that their body shuts down around them, it's horrible.
Or to see what happens to their families.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a soft spot for me, because I remember, like I said, my mom would call 911 all the time, or we would have to call 911 on her because she was so drunk, and we would want the cops to take her away. We would want somebody to take her away, and the paramedics would always be like, oh, well, we could take her on a hold, or we could like go and do like a test or whatever, and the cops would be like, no, she's allowed to drink in her own house.
Yep, and that's the truth. That's definitely true.
And it's so...
It is frustrating, but there's a lot of things that our hands are tied on.
I know, but it's frustrating, you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
For us, it's like, dude, because it's like...
Yeah, that sounds horrible.
It is not fun. But for you guys, you're like probably just as frustrated, because you're like, we literally cannot do anything.
So, and I mean, for the most part, we're taking those patients. It's not really about like putting them somewhere else, but it's more of the underlying health problems that we're dealing with when somebody's going through withdrawals and they're seizing, things like that, or pancreatitis and liver failure and kidney damage.
Yeah, I've seen all of that.
Yeah, it's horrible, and people do die from it. And even in, like, it's weird, there's a really prevalent alcohol problem with people that are 30 and up lately. Because binge drinking when you're in your 20s is a very normal thing, and most people are working in food industry and bar services, and you're not really checking yourself on it because you're 20, whatever, you can do whatever you want. My liver's young, this is just what I do, I don't get hungover yet or anything. And then by the time you're in your 30s, that's just a habit that you do, and people don't think to talk about it because you're not an alcoholic until you're like in your 40s, right? Not true. It's really, really bad. And so
you see a lot of people like in their 30s.
Absolutely.
Like,
they're just obliterated and really, really sick.
Oh my gosh!
Really, there was a patient. He was, and he was 32, and he was in full blown liver failure by 32. And it was on a fluke that his roommate called. He just had a weird feeling in his stomach, and we showed up, and this guy was incredibly lethargic, really sick, really drunk, but he was already yellow, and by the time your skin is yellow, that's a very, very, it's called jaundice. It's a very, very bad sign. Yeah,
we had a coworker at Frontier. He was like, I think he was an alcoholic. No, it wasn't talked about. It wasn't like out there, but it was kind of assumed.
This is just a part of society. We've always just had drinkers.
Yeah.
This is just the drunk guy in the corner. Your drunk uncle. It's what it is. It's messed up.
Yeah, his eyes were always yellow. He was always pretty yellow, and like, people would be like, oh yeah, he has jaundice or whatever, and he has this and that. And it was kind of like low-key. We all knew what it was.
Yeah.
And then one day he just didn't show up.
Oh.
And I don't remember if he, like, got fired or if he passed, you know? I don't remember. But, yeah, it was crazy. I remember being like, oh, my gosh, like, how could you get to that point? I don't understand that, but obviously, you know, that's somebody else's mental health journey.
Well, and, yeah, there's a lot of factors there that I think some of it's just not, you know, understanding your own issues. Some of it's just the environment you're in. A lot of paramedics go after get off after shift and go drink. It's just what we do to relax, and that's part of your routine.
You would have to.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's your routine. It's just how it goes, unfortunately. Not that I'm saying all paramedics are alcoholics. I sympathize with that problem. It's horrible. But that's one of our more common calls.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yikes. Well, I don't know. I feel like I have so many questions.
You can keep asking. That's fine.
I can't think of them now, though, because, like, we're just in this conversation. That's the weird thing about podcasting, y'all.
Yeah,
you
keep going.
Yeah, you just, like, get into a conversation, and then you're like, oh, do I have more questions? Yeah, and then you think about them after, and then it's too late. But, I don't know. I think we're kind of running out of time here anyways. It's 12:55, which is crazy. I can't believe it's already 1.
Wow, we've been talking for an hour about it.
Yeah,
That's
and
insane.
even before this, we were talking just about our life in general.
That's interesting. I like it.
It's going very fast. But thank you for being so open.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for asking me questions about it. I think it's really cool to talk about sometimes. So especially with people that are actually wanting to hear about it and not just want to get the gory details. So. One thing that I've been told is the bad calls are always going to happen. People are always going to get hurt. We don't need to wish it on them. Because there are people that are just sitting there like, oh yeah, I wish like this really would happen, or I want to see this. I really want to see this.
Is it okay to ask what the most dangerous call you've ever gotten is?
Every single dangerous call. The worst dangerous calls that we go on are traffic accidents because we have traffic around us, and it is so dangerous. Fire trucks are hit every day. Cops are hit every day.
Yeah,
I mean,
it makes sense.
Ambulances are hit every day. When we are just sitting on the side of the road, I hate it so much.
Does it give you anxiety?
Absolutely, because you can't control any of those cars racing by you, and people are looking into your scene the whole time. They're causing another accident, or they're driving into your scene.
Have you ever seen that? Like,
yes. Oh, all the time. People do that constantly, and you're just like, what are you doing?
Are you serious?
Oh, absolutely. So that's why those scenes, we try to work fast if we can. We try to just get in, get out, get our people, do what we need to, because I hate sitting on the side of the road like that. I think it's so dangerous. Those are the most dangerous calls we go on. But we always assume that everyone has a weapon. We always assume that everyone wants to hurt us. That is just how we carry ourselves, because if we don't, there's going to be a moment where we let our guard down and something will happen.
Have you had that moment?
Oh, absolutely. People will try to do things all of the time. There was a call, it was a year ago, and the details really aren't important, but basically we went into a house. There was 4 people we needed to take care of. It was some crazy thing that had happened, but while we were walking somebody out, we found somebody down underneath a bed, basically, is where they were sleeping. It was a weird house. When I woke him up, I scared the crap out of him. Did not realize that he was that scared, but he came out and he just had been really freaked out. I walked him outside, blah, blah, blah. A cop came out later after a few minutes, and right in the spot where I had woken up that guy had been a gun. So basically, if I had woken that guy up, scared the crap out of him, and he didn't know who I was or didn't care who I was, and had just been like, pop, pop, no more cat moon, just gone. So that's just how it is, and it doesn't mean that he's a bad dude. It doesn't mean that that's his fault necessarily. He's in his home, he's sleeping. I don't know why he's under his bed. That's not really up to me. But if somebody comes and wakes you up in your bed, probably gonna shoot them. That's just how it is.
That's your reaction.
We're dealing with people that might be intoxicated or might be on drugs or something like that. It doesn't mean they're also bad people, but it just means that
they're not in the right frame of mind
at all. So, and in their heads, we are trying to get them to do something they might not want to do, or we're taking them away, or and that. So of course they're gonna have that fight or flight reaction of trying to get away, and not deal with that. So that makes total sense, but it's a dangerous issue for us.
Yeah.
So domestic violences are always really dangerous because sometimes
tensions are already high.
Absolutely, and if we don't have another crew with us, or fire with us, or police with us, because police respond with us to a lot of calls. It's just the way it is. Doesn't mean anything really. It's just how our system works. if we don't have a backup system or a safety and, you know, the fight's still going on, that's a huge issue because you don't know what's going to happen. So those are dangerous calls. We really go into every call kind of understanding the level of risk and expecting more just so we can be ready for it. Yeah. Some things we can't.
So in a domestic violence situation, I want to ask this question because I think it's really important for the people listening. If you're ever in a domestic violence situation, I've always wanted to know if this was the truth. When I was in the relationship, the relationship I was in. I remember. Yeah. And when I had to call, when it got bad, like really, really bad, it was always bad. But when it got real bad, I had to call the paramedics, 911, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. But they took him away, and they were like, we actually have to take him away. Like, we always have to take the man away.
It's not the man, it's whoever is the aggressor.
It's the aggressor.
Yeah, okay, so whoever is the aggressor in a domestic violence situation. I actually know this from dispatch, not from EMS. It's actually Colorado state law that the state will prosecute in a domestic violence case and not the victim if the victim doesn't want to prosecute because it's so serious.
But it doesn't matter if because I didn't want to.
Exactly.
I didn't want it to be
take
dramatic.
Yours away. But the idea being, if you're in a domestic violence situation, but you're also being intimidated or you know something going on, and you change your mind, you could continue to be hurt. Or
and it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
that's what they told me.
That's why the state takes such a strong stance on that. Is my understanding of it.
Yeah.
So you might have to look that up a little more to be more correct on it, but that's my understanding of it, and that's why. And people always get frustrated about it. They're like, no, I'm dropping the charges. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't call. If you're in an issue like that, you should call always. And somebody should not be hurting you no matter what.
Yeah, you know? That's why I wanted to put it in there. So, like, for anybody who's in that situation, just know there's a way out, and you can call 911 if you're in a situation where they're being aggressive. That'll get them out. So just know that, because I didn't know that. Yeah, and so
it'll get them away from you. I
was like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want him to go away because, like, I don't want to cause drama and have him be mad later or whatever. I don't know.
That's why. That's exactly why, and that's why there should be charges pressed because of that kind of reason. You should not be intimidated into not getting somebody in trouble.
Where else that's a law, but Colorado peeps, if you ever need that information, you know?
That's my understanding at least. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Might need to look it up, but that's what I know from dispatch stuff.
Yeah. So on that note, we're out of time. Thank you for doing this last minute and everything. So bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Thin Walls podcast. If you liked what you heard, then you know the drill. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment, turn on that notification bell, share with a family or with a friend, and just get engaged. It truly means the world to me, and it's a free way that you can help me out. So I hope to hear from you, and I hope to talk to you next Tuesday. Bye.